Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. So today is day 25 of our complete DevOps course, and in this class we will deploy our first Django web application as a Docker container. Okay, so in the previous classes, that is day 23, what we have done is we try to understand the concept of containers. So if you can go to this repository, you will see all of the things that we discussed in day 23 and day 24. So we try to understand the concept of containers. We'll try to see why containers are lightweight in nature when compared to virtual machines. We try to dig into it and see what are the files and folders that a container has. How are they different from virtual machine? Why a container uses a specific files and folders from the kernel. How is one container isolated from the other container? And then we looked into the architecture of Docker, right? So we understood the architecture of Docker, and then we moved to understanding the life cycle of Docker. So the reason why I'm explaining is if somebody hasn't seen the previous videos, then definitely go and watch those videos, because those videos are your stepping stones, or or the things that you have to follow before you jump onto containerizing a web application or containerizing a Django application. So because this application is going to be slightly heavy when compared, or slightly tricky when compared to deploying your first hello world application or just a CLI application. And then we try to understand the terminology. What is a Docker daemon? What is Docker desktop? What is Docker registry? All of these things, right? And finally we installed this Docker on a EC2 instance, and we also saw what are the permissions issue that a user can get once they install Docker. And finally we ran a Docker CLI application. Okay, so these are the things that we have done till now. And today's class, as I promise you, I have written a Django application. Okay, so this is a Django application that I have written, and this is a very basic application. Like basic in the sense is there is no difference. Like for example, if you have an idea of how to containerize a web application, then it will not be any different than containerizing a web application that has three flows or two flows. So this is a single page web application. So even if it is of 2 pages or 3 pages, as a DevOps engineer, you will not worry about it. Okay, so probably if it has 2 pages, then there will be a redirect, or there will be a form action which takes your response, and once a user submits his form action, then it will be taken care by your backend, or it will be taken care by your another view which executes certain actions. And again you will see one more HTML page, or you get you render one more template. But this is about the process that developer does in the background. As a DevOps engineer, you should have idea on how to containerize a Django application. So now the common question that people get here is, many people also ask this question in the comment section. So I explained them that I'll make sure to answer your question during this video. And this is the question that, do I need to have programming experience? So to answer this question, you should definitely have idea of programming, not programming. You should have idea of how application functions. Okay, or how to basically write a skeleton of an application at least. So in this case, I wrote this entire Django application, but it is not required. Like I'm not saying that every DevOps engineer should have knowledge of writing a Django application, but at least when you are seeing this application, for example here, you should understand what this application is doing. Okay, where this application is getting the requirements from, where this application is talking from one service to the another service, because that is how you will be able to containerize these applications. Without that knowledge, you will not be able to containerize. Like for example, if you're looking at this application and you are aware of Django, so by looking at it, you will directly say that, okay, so there is one application inside this, or there is only one microservice inside this Django entire project. And here you have defined the configurations for your entire project inside the settings.py. And finally you wrote the Python code in the views.py, which is executed against the rendering the templates. Okay, so I have rendered the templates using the template folder, and this is the content that is getting served on the URL, or this is the content that is getting served on your browser, right? So this is the understanding that you need to have. Don't worry if you don't have it at this point of time. I'll just take 5 minutes, and I'll try to make sure that people here understand the concept of Django application, because before I containerize a Django application, I just want to make sure that everybody has the knowledge of a workflow of Django application, because tomorrow if you want to containerize another Django application, the process will not be different. So the number of steps that we are doing, sorry, the skeleton of steps or the flow of the steps that we are doing will definitely be the same. Only thing is you'll probably install more packages for an application. Probably you might change the entry point, you might change the CMD, but like I tell you, the skeleton or the flow of steps that you are going to do will be the same. So that's why let me just take 5 minutes here and explain you the flow of Django application. If someone feels that this is not important for them, you can skip this part, but trust me, this is very, very important for you to understand the flow of Java applications, Python applications, Node.js applications. So this is the responsibility of DevOps engineer. If you are a Node.js developer, even if you don't know how does a Python application workflow works, then there is no problem. But as a DevOps engineer, you should definitely have that knowledge. Now, so taking the 5 minutes, firstly, whenever you are writing the Django application, the first thing that you would do is there is something called as like you can just go to the Django documentation as well. So whenever you are building Django applications, the first thing that you have to do is you have to just start with installing Django. Okay, so once you can install Django, okay, to install Django, what you need to do is you just have to first install Python, and then you can install Django using the pip command. Okay, so Python has something called as pip, right? So using pip also you can install Django, or you can also download it from the internet. Let's say you installed using pip, you can simply use the import Django to verify that your Django is imported or not. Once that is done, this is very basic, right? So I'm not going to deep dive and say how to use pip and all. Many people already know it, so let's not waste time. After you do that, the important thing is to understand that Django has something called as Django admin. Okay, so once you install Django, you can also install this Django admin using pip. Just say pip install Django, and probably the other command that you would install is pip install Django admin, I believe. I don't remember the package name exactly, but I can show you that in the Dockerfile. So once you have that, so Django admin is very similar to your Ansible Galaxy. What Ansible Galaxy does, if you're following our videos, you should understand that, because we have already seen in the configuration management course that Ansible Galaxy will give you a skeleton of your Ansible role. Similarly, whenever you are trying to build a project or whenever you are trying to write a microservice with Django, so Django admin can be used to create the skeleton. So here Django admin start project, and this is the name of the project. But in my case, what I have done is the name of the project that I choose is DevOps. So I use the same command and said Django admin start project DevOps. So that has created a skeleton for me inside DevOps. If you go inside DevOps, so this is the skeleton that it created except the demo folder. Now, what is inside this three folders? Okay, ignore the demo application for now. I'll tell you what is inside demo. So till now, once you use the start project, it created a project for you, and inside the project there is nothing related to your applications. So this is only your overall project configuration. Okay, so for example, if you go inside this DevOps, okay, see, these are all your project configuration. So the settings.py has the entire information of, what are the IPs that you can whitelist, what is the database that you're going to connect, if you have any secret keys, if you have any secure information. Okay, and probably if you want to use any Django middlewares, or if you want to support any templates, any web server gateway interface, all of these things is present as part of your settings.py. So you can understand settings.py as a settings Python file. Okay, so it will set the entire configurations for your Django application, sorry, for your Django project, the overall project. Now, after that, you have urls.py, which is responsible to serving the content. So here, if you see, what I said is this is the instance IP address. This is the port. And after that, I said slash demo. Now, what is this slash demo? So slash demo is the context root of your application. So the urls.py will understand that anybody who tries to hit this slash admin, or anybody who tries to hit this slash demo, which I did, it will serve the content on the demo application. Okay, so now what is this demo application? So overall, using the Django project start, Django admin start project, you just created a project. There is no application that you have created. Okay, so you can understand that you have set a base for your application. After that, you have to create your applications. So to create your application, there is again one simple command that is called as Django admin start application. Okay, so this is the command, Python manage.py start app followed by the name of the app that you want to give. Okay, so here in my case, I gave the name of the application as demo. Okay, so if you go back here, so this was the name of the application that I provided. And again, this will create a bunch of files for you. So see how easy is Django, or how easy is it to write a web application or a 3-tier application in Python. Okay, so many people have this worries that, oh, okay, I'm not a developer, I don't know how to write these applications. But as a DevOps engineer, you should also have some basic understanding of development. Only then you can become an extraordinary DevOps engineer. Or if you want to crack DevOps interview positions in good MNCs, or in good companies, then you have to have this understanding. Perfect. So it created all of these files for me except the templates folder that I'll explain you why I created. But apart from it, it created all of these things. And inside this views.py, okay, so this views.py will already be there. You will write your actual code. Okay, so in my case, I just wrote a very simple Python function, which is called as index. What this is doing is it is rendering a HTML file. Now this HTML file you have to place in a folder called templates, and from here your content gets served. Okay, so this is the overall workflow of Django application. Now if somebody wants to do it personally on their own, okay, let's say you have said that, okay, this is a change that I have to do, I'm done with my change, and let me share with the QA team. So before Docker, or before the existence of containers, the process was they used to download this GitHub repository, or they used to download the artifact that you have created. And then what they used to do is they used to create all the dependencies that you have in this requirements.txt. Here in this case, there is very less requirements, but in some cases the requirements can go to 100, 150 depending upon your application. They used to install all of them, and then the actual problem starts. So the QA engineer might be on Windows system, the QA engineer might be on Mac OS, he can be or she can be on a specific distribution of Linux where these commands won't work, for example. Okay, so that was one of the classic problems that system engineers, or DevOps engineers used to face. The developer says that application is working fine, but the QA says that no, application is not working fine. So is there a mistake in your CI/CD pipeline, or is there a mistake that DevOps developer is saying, or is it issue with the QA engineer? You will not understand. So this classic problem is again solved by Docker containers itself, because in container, like I told you in the yesterday's class, we are bundling and we are packaging everything for your application to run. So anybody who wants to run this application, in my case, anybody who wants to run this application here, they don't even have to execute one single command other than Docker build and Docker run. Okay, so those are the only two commands that they have to build. So for that, they just need to have Docker installed on their machine. If they have Docker installed, it is irrelevant to you whether they are using Windows machine, whether they are using Linux, Mac OS, because like I told you in the yesterday's class, again, if we go here, what does a Docker do? So Docker basically runs on a virtual machine or on a bare metal. That means to say on a physical server, and it consumes the resources from the host operating system other than the minimalistic dependencies that it has inside the container. Okay, so it can be Windows or it can be anything, because it has the system dependencies in itself which are required to run your application. So let's say your application requires Python, let's say your application requires a specific pip module, so everything will be part of your container itself, along with the source code or the binary of your container, sorry, of your application. Only if it requires some information, like it has to consume something from the kernel, if it has to do some system calls, so only that things it will do from the host operating system. Regarding remaining every other thing, it will do from the container itself. So that is one classic problem that the containers is solving. Now let's go and see the roles and responsibility of DevOps engineer here. Okay, so DevOps engineer will get a task called, okay, Abhishek, this is my Django application. Now I want to containerize this Django application. Okay, so you'll get it either as a Jira ticket, or you'll get it as some kind of request to you. Now your responsibility will be to analyze this application. So if you are not good with programming, probably a couple of times you can sit with the developers and you can understand what is the workflow of your application. But as I told you, a good DevOps engineer will already have an idea of how does a Python Django application work, how does a Node.js application work, all of these things. Okay, now as a DevOps engineer, I know that what is the first thing that I have to do to containerize this application. I have to start writing a Docker file, which I have already written and submitted to this specific repository. So anybody who's using this repository, you don't have to worry. Just go to this folder called Python web app, and you can simply execute this Docker build, clone this repository, execute Docker build and Docker run, and you will see this application running on your personal machine. It can be EC2 instance or anything. Okay, now as a DevOps engineer, the first step that I would do is I will basically choose a base image. So in this case, I choose a base image called Ubuntu. So if you want to try this same example, you can also try with CentOS and see that there will not be any issue at all. But the only thing is you have to modify these things. Okay, instead of apt-get, you have to use yum for CentOS. Okay, so now from Ubuntu, what I did is I choose a work directory. In the last class, I explained you what is work directory. So it is basically a identification on where your source code is going to save, or let's say you have multiple projects in your organization, or you have multiple people in your team, and whenever you are writing this Docker file, you can create as a standard saying that, okay, we will always put the source code whenever we are containerizing the application in a folder called /app. Okay, so it can be a standard that you can follow. So this is your work directory. After that, this is where your DevOps engineer experience comes into place. That is, like, if you have programming experience, if you are containerizing Python applications, you will definitely know that the first thing to copy inside your work directory is the requirements.txt file. Okay, because requirements.txt is the file where you have your Python dependencies. Okay, so the dependencies that are required to run your application, that is Django and tz data. So what I did is I copied the requirements.txt onto the working directory, and then I copied the source code itself, because you might have the dependencies, but the thing that you need to have is the source code itself. Using the source code and dependency, you will form a bundle, or you will form the binary of your application. After that, what I've done is, okay, I've got the requirements.txt copied, I've got the DevOps source code copied, but if I try to execute this one, now at this point of time, it will fail because this is a Ubuntu base image and there is no Python here. Okay, probably I could have chosen from Python. Then in such cases, you don't even have to install Python. But because we are going in a flow, and in yesterday's class also I explained you using Ubuntu, I thought I'll choose my base image as Ubuntu, and I have installed Python. Okay, so if it is a Python base image, you don't even have to install these things. Once I install Python, so to download the dependencies, I just use pip install -r-r requirements.txt. So every configuration is done now. My application is good to use. And the final command that I have to know as a DevOps engineer is, what should I put in the entry point? What should I put in the CMD? Now, this is again a question that is asked in the comment section, that what is the difference between entry point and CMD? Okay, so I thought I'll cover it in a video, and this is the best time to cover, because in this example, for the same reason, I choose both entry point and CMD. So when somebody asks you what is the difference between entry point and CMD in Docker container, basically both entry point and CMD can be used to execute as your start command, or they can, whenever somebody runs Docker command, Docker run. So both entry point and CMD can serve as your starting command, but the only difference is entry point is something that you cannot change. Okay, so as a user, whenever you are running the container, let's say here if I define Python 3, so they cannot override this value in your Docker image, whereas CMD is something that is configurable. For example, here when I'm running the container, I'm saying manage.py run server, and I'm just changing the IP address or port, then that is a configurable field that you have to pass as CMD. Okay, so like I told you, I can also pass Python 3 in this space, same thing only. So I can simply ignore entry point. I'll show you directly. Okay, so here I can also write it in this way. Instead of entry point, I can probably say Python 3. This is also fine, but the problem is I don't want people to change the executable itself. Okay, the only reason why I want my QE team, or why I want my customers or someone to configure this specific thing is, probably, let's say, what if somebody has already 8000 port that is used by a different process on their laptop. okay, on their EC2 instance. So they will complain saying that, oh, Abhishek, your container is always running on 8000 port, and 8000 port is already occupied on my personal EC2 instance. So I don't have a chance to run this container. So I'll just say that the test has failed, okay, or the application is not working. So for that reasons, what you have to do is you have to have your main executable in the entry point. Okay, so that's the reason. So I don't want them to change Python 3 to Node.js, because this is not a Node.js application. So that's why entry point will have non-overridable values. If it is a HTTP server, for example, you are providing here, so HTTP server, WebLogic or WebSphere or anything, so that will remain the same. The parameters that you are passing to their web server, or the parameters that you are passing for your executable, so here Python 3 will remain the same. And if they want to change anything here, instead of run server, probably they want to integrate with web server gateway interface, they want to pass more values, I'm okay with it. So I can configure, I can put that in a configurable field, that is CMD. Let's say your application, you don't want users to change any of things here. Okay, so in such cases, what you will do is you will pass all of them as part of your entry point. Okay, so if I'm passing everything in entry point, that means if the port 8000 is occupied on their EC2 instance, there is no way your application is going to run, unless like I mean to say, you can pass -f an entry point and all of those things. But on a basic ground, this is the difference between entry point and CMD. That is, whenever you want to pass an executable, so you can use the same approach for your Docker files as well, and this is a very good approach. Okay, so even you should start using this kind of things in your organization if you are not. Okay, so this is how you manage entry point and CMD. So I hope the person who has asked this question is very clear about the concept entry point and CMD. Okay, also we try to cover one more question that was asked in the comment section, that is programming important? So the answer to it is yes, programming is important, and you should have some basic understanding as a DevOps engineer how the application workflow starts. Now let's quickly clone this repository and see what we are going to do, because I want everybody to try this after this class. Okay, so people should start trying these things at their end. Only then you get good knowledge or confidence of your containerization skills. So now what I've done is I've cleaned the container. I've just stopped the container. So even if you go to the browser here, so this is the browser. And if you try to refresh this page, you will see that the application is gone because I have cleaned the container. Now I'll start with the basic. So this is a basic EC2 instance that I have, and what I've done is I just clone this repository. I don't want it to waste the time, so git clone is already done. If you want to clone this repository, you already know where this repository is. You can also find the repository link in the description. So I just entered this repository, and after that, you know that in the examples folder, I place the applications, right? So there are two applications here. One application is first Dockerfile, which we have already seen in the previous class. It's just a CLI application which says hello world and then executed. But this is the application that we wanted to containerize and we want to execute. So let's go inside this. Okay, so I explained you what is inside Dockerfile. I explained you what is inside source code. Explained you what is inside requirements.txt. Now, why do you have to delay? Just say docker build dot, and you see here the application is built. That means if you do Docker images, you will see that the image is built. So this is the image. Okay, now what I need to do is Docker. So I'm going to ask you all one question, and let me see what is your understanding, or what are the things that you understood till now. So Docker run, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a interactive mode. I'm saying Docker run -it, that is to run this terminal container interactively, followed by enter. Okay, now is this application going to run or not? Okay, so if I refresh this application will not run. The reason for it is, okay, I have run this application, but I have not shared the port with my host. Okay, so if you see here, the Django service that is running, or the Django application that is running inside my container, and my container has port 8000 that is exposed. But the main important thing is I am trying to access this application on my EC2 instance and not on my container. So we need to do a port mapping. So there is a slight change that we do to this command, that is Docker run -p. Let us map the port 8000 on the container to host. Okay, I'm using the same port for mapping. Now, once you run it, you will see that your application will run on your favorite browser. Okay, so this is the Django application that we have containerized and we have executed. Isn't it very easy? So let's say you don't understand programming, or let's say you did not understand the containerization that we have done. Don't worry. Look into this GitHub repository. Everything is documented. Okay, look into the video that I have just done. Let's say you did not understand, watch the video one more time, because that way you get understanding of or that way you get the confidence that okay, I can containerize a Django web application. If you can containerize even a single Django web application, that means to say you can containerize any Django web applications, because the process will less or more be the same. Okay, so here or there you might add a few settings related to your database, or you might install more packages in your app, but that is not going to change the skeleton of your Docker image. Okay, that is not going to change the skeleton of your Docker file. So that confidence, if you want to get, you can simply clone this repository, try out things, just modify things. Okay, don't worry about it. Just force this repository, keep changing the things. If something goes wrong, definitely put that in the comment section and we can figure out what mistake that you have done. Okay, so this is about containerizing your first Django application. And one more thing is, I hope you people already know it by now, but the only thing is you also need to expose this port. Okay, so expose is you have to add this to your inbound traffic rules. So somebody might come up and say that, okay, I've done the exact same things, but still my application is not working. Don't worry about it. Your application is not working because you did not add your inbound traffic rules to your security groups. So just go to the instances, click on the instance, and then you will find something called as security here. Click on the security tabs. This is your security group, which has your inbound traffic rules, and you can update your inbound traffic rules saying that allow port 8000 on this specific machine. Okay, so this is how you do it. So click on edit inbound rules. You'll get an option to add a new inbound rule where you can add all of these things. So choose your type as custom TCP, choose the port that you want, and allow all the IP address, like the source should be from everywhere. Or you can also choose your laptop depending upon your wish. Okay, so this is how you containerize a Django web application using Python. Now, once you also understood these things, the next topic that you need to understand is the networking in Docker and the commands in Docker. Okay, so I already added these two files into the GitHub repository, but I'll try to cover them as part of tomorrow's topic because I don't want to complicate this thing, because many people might not have experience in containerizing a Django application. So let us give them some time. Let us give them some time in containerizing both the applications, first Dockerfile and Python web app. So this is all video for today, and in tomorrow's class we will talk about the Docker commands, we will talk about the Docker networking, and important thing that we will also see is how to reduce the size of your container using multi-stage Docker. Okay, so many people have been asking about multi-stage Docker builds. Please explain how to do it. So I'll also cover that in tomorrow's video. Okay, so I have one question before I close the video, and let me see how many people can answer this question. So this is just a question out of the syllabus. Okay, so today we are talking about Python Django, but I just thought I'll ask this question and let's see how many people can answer this question in the comments box. How many EC2 instance can you run on a free AWS account? Okay, so this is the question. How many EC2 instances can you run on a free AWS account? Can you run one? Can you run two? If you can run two, tell me how you can run. If you can run five, how is it possible? If it is 100, also tell me how is it possible. So this is going to be an important exercise. Like if you want to comment and comment the answer, just do it in the comment section. I hope you like this video. If you like, click on the like button. If you have any questions, share me the feedback in comment section. And finally, don't forget to share this video with your friends and your colleagues. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.